Hey guys, Neel here. So I have a quick announcement. I am officially a YouTuber now. I just released my own channel. It's called at Neel B Parek, where I document my life living in Africa while building a national cleaning franchise. So I have about 4 episodes out right now. All of them are super action packed. The first one's about me hiking to Uganda, and the next one's a day in the life in Africa and what I actually do, and just kind of document the journey of a digital nomad living in Africa while building a national cleaning franchise. So check it out. Again, the YouTube channel is called Neel B Parek, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes as well. What is going on, podcast listeners? Neel here for another episode of the Freedom Formula. I've got Jim Frawley here today. Jim Frawley is the founder of Bellwether. He's an executive development coach. He moved from corporate to remote life years ago. Absolute badass. He has a book called Adapting in Motion. He's the host of Jim's Take podcast and is doing a bunch of other really, really cool stuff. Jim, thanks so much for hopping on.
Thank you for having me.
Jim, I always like to start it off with just quickly your background. And I think the cool part of your story is your transition from corporate life over to remote life. And it's funny because you're actually in New York, which is still one of the most expensive places in the world, but you could be anywhere in the world and you chose to be kind of where home is and have a freedom lifestyle for yourself. So I'd actually love to dive into just kind of where you got started and how you figured out the lifestyle that works for you.
Yeah, it took time. So after college, I graduated college in early 2000s. And so the marketplace wasn't really that great. So finding a job was difficult. So my 20 years in corporate were really basically finding something I could do. Right? It was never anything that I wanted to do. And so I fell backwards into all these different roles, from corporate training to data analytics to business strategy. And I navigated around the world and I traveled around the world. But it landed me in the financial industry where I learned a lot. And so I was in the financial industry through the 2008 crisis. And that was like where I really earned my chops, but it completely burned me out. And around 2016, I actually hired a coach. I said, this isn't going to work for me. I was miserable. I didn't really have any direction. And so I put a few business plans together with that coach and then just decided this is it. Like, coaching is it. I heard about the Columbia program, jumped in. And the day I finished the Columbia coaching program, quit corporate, put out a shingle, and never looked back.
Can you explain what that program is? I've actually never heard of it.
So Columbia University has an executive coaching program. It's fantastic. It's a combination of the business school and the teachers college. So it's real focused on adult behavioral change. And so most of the people in it, I mean, these people from around the world, but a lot of them had human resources background. I had more of a business background. So I came at it from a kind of a completely different lens. So it was really eye-opening to me in terms of the development of people and how do you change behavior and how do you really develop an executive. You know, I've done the communication stuff. I've done the earnings calls, the investor relations, all that stuff. I get how that works. But then how do you get someone ready to be COO? How do you get someone ready to be chief marketing officer or CEO? And how do you teach them the questions and the questions they should be asking themselves and building a philosophy and all of those types of things? So it really, it was a nice wrapper on the things that I had always been doing. I just didn't know that I had been doing it.
Jim, I have a question for you. How did you know when you wanted to leave corporate that you wanted to get into executive coaching? Like, is it something that you've always wanted to do? Is it something where you're like, well, I'm already doing this, like it's an easy first step? Or can you walk me through that mindset of leaving corporate?
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to do something not corporate. And it turns out now, after the work, you know, I coached myself on a bunch of things, and it turns out I'm incredibly hostile to authority. And so I always hated just having, I hated having a boss. And, you know, that realization was pretty eye-opening to me. You know, every review I ever had, my 360s, I always got a 10, 10, 10 from everybody except one person was always my direct manager. So I must have subconsciously been doing something bad for them. So when I went to this coach, I actually put together like 5 different business plans. I was going to open up a community center. I was going to, altruism is very big for me. I was going to set up a travel company where you go volunteer. So you do vacation and volunteering and kind of meshed the two, but none of them really jumped out. And after going through the process of putting together these kind of semi-business plans of what would work and what wouldn't, I realized, you know, when I heard about the coaching program, I didn't know it existed. I didn't know executive coaching was really a thing, or really like a business that would be functional. But once I heard about it, I said, this is it. It just kind of made itself evident. After all the other work I had done, I said, this is just exactly where I should be and what it is that I'm supposed to do.
Jim, so a lot of people listening here are maybe searching for a business model to start. They want to escape the 9 to 5. They want to get into business by themselves. But I think there's a lot of different ways of approaching it, right? I did a side hustle for a couple years. I was in private equity, side hustle, eventually quit that job. Some people, I think it's better for them to just go all out from day one, quit, find whatever business model and just get going. Other people, it might be better to do something half a step from their existing work in corporate, if it makes sense. Like for you, Jim, you were in the corporate world, you probably knew a lot of like coaching already, I'm assuming. So you just have to polish it and you can step into that. I'm just curious, if have you given the thought, if like someone came to you and said, "Hey, I want to escape corporate. What's the path? How do I do it?" What would you advise based off of your experience?
I always hate to answer this question with "it depends,"
Mm.
but it
The
depends
most
on the
like
person.
consultant lawyer answer ever, right?
Right,
Like
right,
it
right.
depends. Yeah.
But it depends on you as an individual, and I think a lot of people
Yep.
have to really think about your comfort level, your motivations, and your values. And many of us don't, and your beliefs. Many of us don't put together, a real articulated system of beliefs. Most people haven't said, "This is what really motivates me." Some people haven't said, "This is what I really value." Maybe they'll spit out some of the things that they heard, like they're supposed to value this or they're supposed to value that.
Right.
For some people, yeah, you should get a side hustle and see if it overtakes the corporate job because you still need money, right? But
Mm.
then other people, maybe they have a spouse who works and they can just go full blast, and it's a family discussion and do that. Some people,
Yeah.
so the comparison we always have with what other people do is really a misnomer and a mistake. Because when I got into coaching, there were some people who just blasted off and had all this stuff, but they were in they had the HR connections and they had all this other stuff. They were just in a
Yeah.
different type of situation. I just had dinner with a friend who set up yogurt shops, and now
Oh
he
wow.
just opened his third yogurt shop in Manhattan. And I always would ask him, I said, "Why yogurt? Why yogurt?" And it had nothing to do with the yogurt. He just wanted to be his own boss and wanted to go into some kind of retail. And that's just,
Yep.
as he started exploring it, this is what just became evident. So, what I would say is you have to start by asking yourself questions. And the definition of a question is something where you legitimately don't know the answer. And so, what do
Hmm.
you value?
I like
What
that. Yeah.
motivates you? And what comfort level of risk are you willing to take? But also have the awareness that everything's going to be fine, right? A lot of these things are going to be, they're not going to work, and that's okay. But you're going to learn as part of the process goes on. The business I started 10 years ago is completely different than what it is today, right? And you kind of have to
Hmm.
roll with it and ask those questions and just collect data and say something
Yeah.
will make itself evident.
It's by the way, I totally agree. And like I also hate the answer depends, but in this one it actually is that. And I talk to hundreds of franchise prospects like every year, thousands even, right? Just to see who's a fit. And a lot of it comes to what's your risk tolerance, what's
Mhm.
your time capacity, and how much cash do you have. Like that's mostly the three answers, as well as your expectations. I do think a lot of people are searching for something to get into. Like I went from like finance to cleaning. I've never cleaned something a day in that life. My wife gets mad at me every single day because she's like, "You're so dirty." I'm like, "Yeah." So I started to clean a company. But like for me, my philosophy is I don't really care what the business is, and I've started a couple of businesses. And the funny part is like 90% of businesses are the same. The end output, sure, is going to be a little bit different, right? If you're super into fitness and you open up a gym versus you open up a cleaning company, yeah, the end output's different, but it's still KPIs, it's still management, it's still people management, it's still customer acquisition. It's largely the same. So many times if people ask me, should I follow my passion, or like, hey, I'm really into fitness, let me open up something like that. I think you could, because, if you're really going to like the end product, but realize the end product is like probably 10 to 20% of what the actual business is. And the rest of it is kind of the same depending on what model it is. It's relatively the same.
Yeah, it's you can follow your passion. I mean, using the fitness example, there are people who want to be in the fitness world, but running a
Mm,
business is very different than just being around fitness people. And
yep.
so that's where the motivations and values come in. Is some people are really motivated by money. They don't care what business they have. They're just focused on the numbers and the money. Some people want to be the operator, not really the running of the business. And so do you go find a partner maybe to kind of help you with the things that you don't want to do that they're really into, and you kind of pair it up that kind of way. So what you want to do and how you want to do it, there's always an answer, but you just say, what are the possibilities and how do I fill this gap in?
Yeah. Nailed it. Jim, can you tell me a little bit more about what you do with executive development? Like what kinds of businesses you're going into? What are the most common problems you see?
Yeah, it's so the easiest way to say it is if you have someone who's, let's say, an executive director, managing director, and wants to get into the C-suite, I'm the person who's going to get them into the C-suite. I don't really work with the people who are already in the C-suite. Sometimes I do, but the ones I really love are the ones to get them ready for that. What don't they know?
Ah,
How do you communicate at the C-suite level? How do you build an executive philosophy and have an opinion in the workplace? You know, if you're going to be in the C-suite, you need to have a philosophy on people strategy, on business strategy, on all of these types of things. How do you ask questions? And so I will either work one-on-one with an executive, or I will take a team and just get them to that next type of level for whatever it is that they're working on. And generally, it's the things that we typically hear: executive presence. Everybody wants to talk about presence and how they kind of come off at that C-suite level. Executive communications. How do I communicate to either large groups of people, small groups of people, and get my message across? And then how do I prepare for change when I don't know what change is coming? And that's where philosophy comes in and belief systems come in. And that's really
wow.
what the book was about, is how are you going to, I learned it in 2008. How do you prepare for change when you don't know what's coming? And so much change is coming now. 2008 was the crash, but now you've got AI and more crashes coming. How do you position yourself in advance so that the downfall isn't as rough?
Yeah. Jim, a question for you. So, first of all, is the company paying you to come in and train their MDs, as an example?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. How do people who aren't paying for the coaching respond to the coaching, if that makes
So
sense?
good question.
Like,
Right. So in order
are they
for a
bought in,
coaching,
or they're like, well, it's not my money? Yeah.
yeah, I don't take them. I've actually fired a bunch of clients because it wasn't going to work. I'm very
Mm,
fortunate to be in the position that I only have to take people that I want to work with.
yeah.
And I refer out a lot of business that I'm just not the right fit, right? And sometimes people, some people really want to work with a female coach, and that's fine, right? And I've got female coaches that I can refer business to and get them matched up to the right type of person. Some people might want to go really deep into maybe they want someone with a marketing background or something like that. Fine, I can, I've got people like that. For a coaching engagement to be successful, at the beginning of each engagement, I do a couple things. One is I pick an end date and we agree on the end dates, generally
Mm.
6 months out, and then I'm done. I tell everybody in the nicest way possible, I hope I never speak to you again. So I don't do this ongoing, forever
Right.
type of thing. We are here to get you to a certain point, and you will be coaching yourself at the end. And I'm available if they need anything after. I get phone calls from people 2 years ago, and they say, "Oh, I'm in this position. Can you help me out?" Yeah, we hop on a call and we kind of refresh stuff. But then also, they have to make the business case on why this investment is going to make sense. So if I'm going to work with an executive and it's going to be, let's say, 25 grand for these 6 months, they have to say, how is this going to bring in $100,000 worth of revenue and benefit the company? And they have to put that business case together. So they have to be invested. If they're
Yep.
being assigned a coach, generally I'm not really going to take it.
Got it. Jim, can you talk me through how you got into this business model and you're like, cool, this is what I'm going to do. I'm sell services, and that's what you're getting in and doing. How has it evolved, and what are the KPIs you track? How's your actual model work?
Yeah, so it's evolved. I had no idea what I was doing when I first got started.
Mhm.
But one of the big pivot points for me, um, it was about 3 years in, and it was going fine. I was doing my work, but I was doing my year plan, and I had this realization that I needed to have an opinion. Right, I had to unlearn all of the corporate stuff. Like there are no rules
Oh, interesting.
for
Yeah.
anything, and so that awareness for me just put me on a trajectory, like you know, crazy, where there were so many limitations I had put on myself based on the assumptions of the way that it was supposed to be in finance in 2008. That's so irrelevant today.
Hmm.
And so now one of my core belief systems, I've got like 6 core beliefs. The first two are: one, there's nothing that can't be done, and number two is there are no rules. And so when you think about that, and I come in from an external person and I will just destroy these frameworks that exist in a business because they're so old, um, undoing those shackles really helps, get them to see different ways and different ways of assumption, or different ways to come up with ideas and sharing information and working with other people and challenging those people around them, that puts them on a trajectory.
Hmm.
And it's worked so well that all my business now is referral. So now everything that comes in is a referral. I mean, some people hear about me, they hear the podcast and say, I want to work with you and do that. But my whole model now is based on building based on people who I've worked with and are saying, you got to work with Jim. And this is, the way that it's got to be.
Jim, you mentioned undoing the shackles, and it sounds like you mean like mindset. They have certain beliefs, which is like putting them in a box. Do you see common threads of what these shackles are? And is this very specific to the corporate world?
There are shackles. Yeah, you've got corporate shackles and you've got personal shackles. So the one corporate shackle is it's not the way things are done here. And that's always like, no, that'll never fly. And it's an assumption. It's like people tell me I can never start a business. They say, why not? It's going to be too expensive. Well, how expensive is it going to be? And I say, I don't know. I say, well, then you don't know that it's right. So I always put people through this kind of 5 whys. Ask yourself why 5 times, and you're going to get to a very different answer. So that's not going to work. Why? Because the boss isn't going to like it. Why? Because they have a different initiative that they want to do. Why? And if you go through it, then all of a sudden you could start to build a business case and say, oh, well, you know what? Actually, maybe this is relevant. Maybe this is how I position and do that. So that's kind of a corporate system, the 5 whys. Yeah. On an individual level, I would say the shackles, the big shackle that we have is social. It's all based on what other people are going to think. I would argue, and this is my next podcast, is all of our problems are social problems, right? Our money problems, we have money problems, but it's compounded by what are other people going to think. We're not afraid of failing. We're afraid of what people are going to think when we fail. So it's a very different challenge. It's a very different lens to put over it. We're not afraid of speaking in public. We're afraid of what people are going to think if we make a mistake when we speak in public. So if I could ask you to speak about, I don't know, Star Wars or something, you'd be fine. But if you're speaking about work stuff, all of a sudden it's a very different thing. So we've got personal shackles and corporate shackles that we kind of have to unwind and question those things that are right in front of our face, but just ask why. And once we get to a different place, it challenges and allows us to get different answers.
Man, I actually really love that. I mean, you're totally right with the social shackles. Like, I think it's huge. And question for you, Jim, like, how is it possible for someone listening to this to even unwind social shackles? Because I'm assuming part of it is evolutionary, right? Like, you want the acceptance of your community, your tribe, whatever. Therefore, you have fear of being outcast. How do you undo that? Is it just by asking the 5 whys, or is there an actual process to do this?
Yeah, well, I think you ask yourself the question why. And the reason I love the question why is because there's no judgment or assumption to it. It's wide open. I learned a long time ago, the brain treats social rejection in the same way it treats physical pain, which is why we avoid social interaction so much. And now we're so isolated, we're working, especially when, I mean, one of the things I learned working from home at the beginning was I had to go work out of the library or something. I needed some kind of micro interaction to make sure that I was part of something. And our anxiety that builds up in being isolated, which is not the same as solitude, puts these layers on top of us, and we assume, and our imagination goes, and that goes back to building a belief system. What do you believe in? Are you comfortable with your beliefs so that you can then interact with other people? And so you really need 3 types of social interaction. One is a support system, right? Everybody, your 5 people near you, but you need micro interactions, and you need to meet new people to challenge your belief system. And that's really, I think this comes down to a life thing is, these people are going to challenge what you believe, and your belief system should evolve based on the people you meet. A person living in the East Village in New York is going to have a very different, belief system potentially than someone who lives in the suburbs of a town in Alabama, because their experiences are very different. The people they interact with are very different. And so the more you expose yourself to different people socially, you open up a whole can of worms of possibility.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like understanding something in theory versus actually putting it to the test, right? Like, I went to this ashram in India. Ashram's like a place for people to study philosophy, really. And, I remember talking to this kid there. He was 22 years old. And first of all, I was like, wow, you are way more mature than me. Like, you lived at this ashram, you're 22 years old. I was like partying my ass off, right, in college around that time. And so it was incredible. And I asked, like, cool, you're going to be here for 3 years. You're studying philosophy. What is the biggest challenge? Like, do you feel like you understand everything now? And he said, it's fine when you're here because you're in this peaceful, serene environment. But the real test is taking the philosophy and going out in public and actually being challenged, right? It's so easy to be Zen if everyone around you is Zen. But all of a sudden, you have the taxi driver in front of you who's causing issues, or you have X, Y, and Z happening, which is going to cause different thought processes. So a lot of it's not really like just the theory and the studying. And I think this kind of goes back to entrepreneurship and analysis paralysis and a lot of things where a lot of people think things in theory and think that causes change, where Jim, kind of like what you're saying, is these micro interactions is actually what's going to challenge you. and which is actually going to make you evolve in your thought process.
Yeah, if you don't take some kind of step, you can workshop yourself all day long, but nothing will change. Yep.
Jim, I know you have a book coming out called Understanding Why. Is that the core philosophy of this book?
Yeah, it's building a belief system, right? Asking the question why. And so it's going to be a series of 3 books categorized in different categories, but it's, how do you build a belief system and philosophy on failure? How do you build a belief system and philosophy on friendship? What's your philosophy on dating, on love, on luck, on death, whatever it is. We're told what to think all the time. And so how do you start to build it up on your own and just ask yourself questions? And when you realize that beliefs are not truths, you cannot know something and believe something at the same time. All of a sudden, your way to communicate what you believe is very different, because now you're recognizing that other people may just believe something different than you. And it's really a social exercise in a weird way, but you need that core kind of function on the inside on what it is that you believe. Yeah,
I love that. And Jim, when is that book coming out?
Hopefully October.
Okay,
if I can finish it. Yes. Yeah. About 4 months left, but it's just about done. So, yep.
That's awesome. And Jim, if anyone here wants to find you, read your other book, find your podcast, where could they find you?
Everything's on jimfrawley.com. That's probably the easiest way to do it. I don't even know what my socials are. I don't do much on social, but it's I think it's at Jim Frawley NY. That's what it is. So,
perfect. And we'll put a link to Jim's website, plus his LinkedIn, where all the other links are there, so you guys can find it in the show notes. And Jim, thanks so much for hopping on today. This was awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.